Welcome everybody. I'm so glad to be here with you again this evening. It's actually, as you can see, a very relaxed atmosphere. We are on vacation in Ocean City, New Jersey, and we're outside on this beautiful balcony on this wonderful night, and there's going to be all kinds of noises in the background, and that just adds some fun. So I'd like to introduce Mark Marcassani, and we have the same last name. He does pronounce it a little bit differently than I do. He's actually my husband's cousin, and I wanted to introduce him to you all because he has so much wisdom and experience. I thought that you could really benefit from his journey and what he learned along the way, and he has graciously taken out some time from his vacation to sit with me and talk a little bit about it, so hopefully that dog's not too bothersome in the background. But anyway, thank you so much, Mark,
my honor,
for being
my
here.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. This is very, very generous of your time.
Well,
so
I've always been
appreciate it.
impressed with you and really respect you. So
Well,
when
that's
you
very
asked,
kind.
I have to say yes.
That's very kind. I appreciate the words. Yeah. Why don't you talk a little bit about Primerica, which is
Sure.
the company that that you're with and the business that you build. If you could just give maybe a 30-second
Sure.
sort of introduction of what Primerica does.
Sure. Kathy, my wife, Kathy and I have been with Primerica 28 years now.
Wow.
So I started when I was 25. And we really teach people, our mission statement is that we help people earn additional income and become debt-free, properly protected, and financially independent. So we want to make sure that people are getting out of debt, as well as making sure they're properly protected with the right kind of term insurance. God forbid something happens, they die prematurely, but also be saving money on a systematic, consistent basis so that they could achieve financial independence. And then, of course, we do recruit, train, and develop people to start part-time with us. And when they start earning more money part-time with us than they're making in their full-time career, then they can make a career change with no risk.
Wonderful. Very exciting.
Yeah, it's fun. It's
Yeah.
sexy talking about money. People love talking about
People
money.
do love talking
Yeah.
about money. It's a very hot topic, and people want to know more, that's for sure. And you provide such needed services in multiple levels, actually,
Yes.
multiple ways.
People are really hurting financially right now, primarily because they have no financial education. No one ever really, mom and dad doesn't ever really sit down and say, okay, here's how you save, here's where here's where you take 10% or 20% of your income and you save it in a well-managed growth mutual fund in an IRA. So that's not a conversation that parents have with their kids very often. People do get themselves in debt pretty quickly and don't really know how to navigate out of it. And when it comes to term insurance, I mean, very, very few people wake up and say, honey, let's have 5 insurance guys over the house today. We'll buy a policy.
We'll get some quotes.
It doesn't happen. So people are grossly underinsured. They're not saving enough money, and they don't really know how to manage their debt.
Yeah. And you're right, it's not a conversation that most families have around the dinner table growing up, and it's a problem.
Yeah.
And I actually think it gets in the way of business building ultimately, because I do think that that's one of the reasons that people have difficulty talking about the opportunity the businesses have, because we're not used to talking about money. We're not used to talking about business and all of that. And so I think learning how to language these issues when you're not used to talking about that becomes a barrier.
Well, I know in our business, with direct marketing, we found it's so much more attractive to talk about earning extra money. So we really, even though we're proud of our products, I've never been ashamed, I've never been embarrassed. I really feel like what we do is noble and meaningful and honorable, really helping families financially. But we talk to people about how would you like to earn some extra money part-time, or how would you like to make a career change, because I think people can relate to that. Because people do work crazy part-time jobs. I know I did. I had a lot of stupid part-time jobs.
So tell me a little bit about where you started, because it's very different than where you are now.
Yeah, well, we started, like I said, 1985. I was 25 years old. And at the time, I was working my buddy's tree company. So I just cut down trees and trimmed trees. I did have a good title. I was a tree surgeon. That was my title, tree surgeon.
Can't beat that. Yeah.
And so here I am, really just working with my buddy's company. But in addition to that, I was a salad boy at a restaurant. I think I worked 20 hours a week. Back then, made $5 an hour gross. Okay, very gross. That is just gross.
Yes, it is gross.
And so if it was $100 gross, you took out taxes, I'd work 20 hours to make $79. It was just ridiculous. I pumped gas. New Jersey is still one of those few states you cannot pump your own gas. So I pumped gas in the freezing cold. And then what else did I do? Oh, I was a security guard.
Really?
In a warehouse.
I did not know that.
That was one of my part-time jobs. So when I saw Primerica, I had a friend of mine that I hadn't spoken to in over 10 years. So, Anita, just use your imagination. Last time I saw him, he was 13 and I was 15.
Okay.
So you fast forward the clock, I'm 25 years old, haven't talked to him in 10 years, and he calls me up and says, hey, how would you like to make a lot of money part-time. Now, seriously, if somebody doesn't call you for 10 years and they say that, you'd be a little skeptical, I'm
Absolutely.
sure. But you'd really be skeptical if his name was Vinny. So, and then my
Jersey.
friend Vinny called me up. And nothing against Italians, I'm Italian. So.
Absolutely.
But Vinny called me up and said, how'd you like to make a lot of money? I said, yeah, I'm always open. So when I took a look at the business, even though I didn't really understand all the financial services part of it, there were a couple things that made a lot of sense to me. One was the idea that most people in Middle America do not have a financial game plan. And so right away I looked at my parents. My dad was a longshoreman. My mom was a nurse. They both worked very, very hard. They had a great work ethic. Thank God I didn't learn that from them. But I watched them work really hard and still not have any money. And so it kind of hit me, hey, hard work alone is not the answer to winning the money game. And then it was really the part-time opportunity that attracted me. The very last speaker of my presentation said that by teaching people these concepts on how they could get their financial act together, that you could earn $250 to $500 for about 4 hours worth of work. Well, I'm a dreamer, so I started spending the money in my head during the meeting. I was like, that would be unbelievable. If I could make $1,000 a month, part-time, where I teach people how to get their financial act together, and I got my financial act together, I thought that'd be the greatest part-time job in the whole world. So I got started, and I got licensed, and then my first month with a license, I made $1,600.
Wow.
And that
my
was,
gosh.
yeah.
Wow.
That was a lot of money to me
Yes,
in 1985.
Yeah.
So I quit my stupid tree job, and I went full-time. And so Kath and I have been able to work together as a partnership. And in the last 28 years, we've opened up 60 offices in 13 states. And it's not because we're so great. It really because the opportunity is great. The company's been amazing. And it's really been a dream come true. Not always easy. I mean, disappointments, setbacks, frustrations, challenges, like in anything, but the reward was worth it for sure.
And I definitely want to dive into that. But let me back up a little bit because you mentioned your parents, and of course I know a little bit about your history. But how was success conceptualized in your house growing up? Because a lot of times I find that with my clients and just the various people that I work with, success is not something that's discussed. Achievement is not like a normal sort of household concept or culture. How would you describe your household growing up?
I think success was winning in sports. That's kind of what it came down to. My dad was a football coach for 35 years or whatever. And so, we grew up in a very athletic family. So that's how I think he measured success. When I looked at my parents, once again, they worked very hard, and that was a great example. But they didn't really save money. They didn't have a financial game plan. So although I watched them work hard and still not really succeed financially, something in me said, there's more to this. You're not going to succeed without working hard. So there's no free lunch.
Right.
You're not going to strike an oil well in your backyard. You're not going to hit the lottery. You're going to have to work hard at whatever you do. But you also need to know what to do with the money when it comes in. And so that's when I was very open to, okay, mom and dad are not financially independent. They're not millionaires. I love them. They're awesome.
They are awesome.
Married 54 years. They were great role models. But I knew I needed to learn about how money worked because it was kind of a middle class, almost blue collar. Dad was a union guy. Mom was in the union. So their mentality was not an abundance, prosperity, wealth mentality. It was pretty much a middle-class mentality.
Just interrupt. At what point do you think you became aware of that and how it didn't have to be that way?
Good question. Pretty early on. So here I was, 25, and I wasn't really beat up by the world. Sometimes you see guys that have been out there in corporate America and, they've get let go every 5 or 7 years, and they just have corporations promise them the world and never deliver on them, and so they get a little bitter or jaded or wounded. I was 25. I was a little naive, which is a nice word for dumb. Okay, naive is a nice word for dumb.
Yes.
And so they started telling me, hey, you can make $100,000 a year. I was like, okay. Yeah. And I got around other prosperity, success-minded people, and it dawned on me pretty quickly that they thought differently than I thought.
Interesting.
And then I had a mentor who was very, very successful, and he suggested that I run out and buy Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and he said that I should read it 12 times cover to cover my first year in the business, which would be, if you're mathematically challenged, it would be once a month.
Once a month.
So I ran out, I bought the book right away, and I can honestly say I gave it my best shot. I wish to this day, I could say I read it 12 times. I did not. But I read it 8 times, cover to cover, my first year in the business. And then I made it a habit. Every January, I read Think and Grow Rich again.
Wonderful. Wow.
So the first 8 readings, 28 years, plus maybe, another 5 or 10 in the process. So I've read Think and Grow Rich 40 or 45 times. And every time I read it, I see something I didn't see.
Really?
And it changed my thinking from very, very middle class to much more that I can control and attract the wealth. I can attract the success. The way I thought had a big impact on the level of success that we achieved. And that book, I would say, was very instrumental.
Transformative for you. Yeah. How long do you think it took you to... Obviously, it's a transformation. It's a continual process, a continual journey. But if you had to kind of identify like a time period between when you were 25 and started, between when you kind of really got it.
Got what? The thinking?
Well, yeah, the thinking part of it and understanding the personal growth part of success and achievement.
Yeah, I would say 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
Very early on, too. It was just hard work. So whatever I lacked in brains or the right thinking, I overcame just long hours, hard work. Yeah. So it was mostly perspiration at that point. And then we started to discover things like working on our business, not just working in our business. Kathy and I, took us a while to learn how to really work together to where we were bringing out the best in each other. I think early on... she wasn't bringing out the best in me. I was a jerk and immature. We were both Italian. We argued over everything. And some of it was, she was already in the business. So she was, at age 24, she got her income to $100,000. So when I was 26, I was making $100,000 a year. We were both regional vice presidents. We got married, combined our businesses. And on paper, the merger looked good. But in reality, we argued and fought over everything. Everything I did was wrong. Because it wasn't the way she would do it, and I really was pretty immature. So that took about 8 years before we really, the big breakthrough there was, one time we were flying, I think from Colorado to Tennessee, and I took out just a blank legal pad, drew a line down the middle, put Kathy's name up here, my name up here, and said, all right, honey, what are you good at? What are your strengths? What do you really like to do? And I listed all of her strengths. And then we made a list of my strengths. I was smart enough to make her list longer. She had
You're
a longer,
good husband, smart man.
longer, more strengths. And so once we identified that, we said, all right, babe, why don't we do this? Why don't you proactively operate in your strengths at least 90% of the time? I'll proactively operate in my strengths, and I think we'll be able to accomplish so much more rather than you telling me what to do, me not wanting to do it, or me not being that very good at it. And so she's like, that's a great idea. Well, about a week later, she calls and says, I think you need to take care of X, Y, Z. And I said, honey, I'll do it, but I thought we identified that was your strength. She goes, you're right. So what took her 20 minutes would have taken me 2 hours, and I wouldn't have done a good job at it. So now we started really honing in, okay, Mark's good at this, Kathy's good at this, and when we did that, we multiplied the effectiveness of our partnership in a way that it was exponential.
Wow. Where did you get the idea to do that?
Well, 8 years of arguing, we had to do something different. I mean, I just needed to say, all right, babe, we're not operating in our strengths. It was just that simple.
Yeah. Wow. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So what were some of the other challenges that you faced? Because a lot of my clients and my audience, success is made during the really tough times, and in that moment when you just don't feel like picking up the phone and calling your leads, and you just, it's so much easier to go bopping around. Well, these days on Facebook, you didn't have that then. You're not even on Facebook now, but so you wouldn't have that problem even now. But the distractions are more now, certainly. What did you struggle with that? Like really kind of not wanting to do kind of what you knew you needed to do?
Yeah, and I think everybody does. Nobody is superhuman. We all have to do things that we don't want to do in order to get what we want to have. So, given my choice, I would love to sit around and eat ring dings and chocolate ice cream and go to the beach every day, but that's not the way life works. But if you pay a price and you work hard and you get financially independent, then you are free. So what motivated me was freedom. Anita, I was not nearly as money motivated as I was freedom motivated.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I sat back and said, okay, in order for me to get free, to be in a position where nobody could tell me where to go, when to be there, when I could have vacation, how much I was going to get paid, whether I had a job or not. In order to be free, I thought there's two ways to get there. One is if I save and invest enough money so that the dividends and the capital gains and the interest off my money gives me the lifestyle that I want. And then the other way would be to recruit, train, and develop enough leaders so I could build a business that works instead of me. Because really, given the choice, I would rather goof off than work. And so Kath and I said, let's do both. Let's make sure that we're saving and investing our money, but we're going to build enough leaders so that the business can run without us. So that was really our game plan. And we became financially independent our 10th year into business, which was a dream come true. And that motivated. So
in those tough moments.
Yeah, I stayed focused on the prize, not the price. So there's a price you have to pay no matter what. And of course, the bigger the goal, the bigger the reward, the bigger the price. So in those moments, I wasn't going to get financially independent if I was on the couch or if I was not leading by example. And I wanted to get financially independent. It really came down to that goal. I wanted it bad. It was very clear to me that I could achieve it. And I saw other people achieve it, so that helped me. I said, not to be condescending in any way, but I looked at other people and said, gee, if they could do it, then I could do it. That encouraged me a lot. It wasn't like just one or two people were succeeding. There were a lot of people succeeding. And so that motivated me. Plus, I wanted to deliver for my family. I wanted my wife to think I was a hero. I wanted my kids. I wanted to be there, for my kids, the different events that they did. So for me, I just stayed focused on the prize, not the price. So I had to prospect. I had to, field train. I had to do tons of meetings. I had to do all those things. But it was worth it. It was worth it because the option would have been being average and ordinary, or being mediocre, or being an employee. I didn't want to be an employee.
Right.
I wanted to be in a position where nobody was going to put their thumb on me. And I thought that was worth the price for sure.
Yeah. I know that personal growth is an integral part of who you are. At what point did that click in? And maybe that went hand in hand with Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah,
maybe that was your wake-up call.
I had read some self-help books before that, but really reading and studying Think and Grow Rich, I realized that so much of success, and for me, success is reaching the goals that I set for myself. So if I set a goal and I reach it, that's success to me. That's my definition. So even on a part-time basis, if there's people that want to make $500 a month and they make $500 a month, that's successful. If other people want to make $5 million a year and that's their goal, well, then when they reach their $5 million a year goal, that's their definition of success. But for me, I realized that this was about programming, and that if we're suffering from limiting beliefs or doubts or all these self-imposed limitations, that will literally hold us back from achieving. Because I watch people self-sabotage. They say they want this. Oh, yeah, I really want to get my wife out of work, or I want to get my kids out of daycare, or I want to, be a millionaire. Whatever their goals are. But then they do things that actually prevent them, and it's just a self-sabotaging. So it's a reprogramming. If somebody bought a 100-year-old house, well, they're not going to get their Wi-Fi hooked up in there. They're not going to have the lighting that they want. They would literally have to rip out all those old wires and put in all new wires, electrical wires. And I think for some of us, we get programmed with all this old thinking. And then we're talking about, we want to be successful, but our programming is here. We have to rip out all that old programming and put new programming in. And that did hit me pretty early on.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah. That, reading Think and Grow Rich, I started getting a very, very healthy appetite for, self-help books and CDs and seminars and all those things. I just wanted to get better.
I love that metaphor. That's a great metaphor.
Oh, the old house?
Yeah. That's because that's it in a nutshell. Getting rid of all the old wiring and putting new stuff in.
And the good news is you can.
It is, and everybody can.
It's not just some mystery or some myth. Success is this invisible. No. Anybody who's become successful, and there's so many amazing examples in our day where we see these people, whether it's the founder of Amazon or Steve Jobs or on and on. There's so many great success stories, and if they can do it, we can do it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Did you ever encounter in your personal growth journey learning about something that your reading is very important to do, but you just didn't want to have to do it?
Now, I read a book that was called What You Say When You Talk to Yourself by Dr. Shad Helmstetter. And in there, he talked about making a self-talk tape to reprogram yourself. And at first, I resisted that. I thought, this is pretty hokey. It's pretty corny. So I really didn't want to do that. But as I read the book some more, I thought, this might be the fastest way to reprogram myself. So I think that was something I resisted at first, but eventually did. You were talking, too, about some of the challenges. For me personally, not for Kathy, but for me, it was patience. I needed to be more patient with people who didn't process things the way I process them, or I just needed to be patient with people, helping them overcome their fears, overcome their obstacles, and just kind of loving people more instead of, because I was always an action-oriented. Yeah. And so there would be times that, hey, I'd be out there, leading the charge and let's go, let's win, and maybe not real sensitive to some of the dead bodies that we were leaving in the wake, And so I had to grow in my people skills, where I was actually just kinder, more patient, didn't say what I was really thinking. Started to, one of the things I learned from Kathy, she was great at this, was the idea of looking at people not for where they are, but for where they can be. That you look at the goodness in them, the potential in them, and I think I was a little too quick to give up on people. Right? If they weren't performing at a level that I thought after the time I invested with them, I'd kind of move on a little too quickly. Whereas Kathy taught me, no, you love everybody, you praise everybody, you appreciate everybody, you believe in everybody, you see them for where they could be, not for where they're at. And I think that helped a lot in our team growth.
I know with a lot of my clients, sometimes they struggle with having team members who they believe it more than the team member believes it. Like they believe in them more than the person does themselves. And that actually produces a lot of tension and anxiety in the leader, because they really can see such potential in somebody. Did you ever have that experience?
Totally relate to that, yeah. And so Kathy was better at that. And plus I had some other mentors that I learned very well, in addition from reading and seminars and all those things. When I have a mentor and I watch somebody who's successful at a certain area, I can copy. I'm a good copier. And so I would copy people who were more patient and gentle and believed in people. And so the other thing that helped me was the idea that, okay, so 20% of the people are going to do 80% of the work.
Yes.
I think that there's no way. I think in any church,
in
any church today, there's 20% of the people give 80% of the money. There's 20% of the people who bring 80% of the food to the potlucks. I mean, whatever you do. And so when I started to realize that, I said, okay, I'm going to love everybody, praise everybody, not disregard the 80%ers or make them feel like I don't care about them or I don't have any time for them. But I'm going to be way more intentional and proactive about spending 80% of my time with the 20%ers and still loving all over the 80%ers. And that helped me, because many times the 80%ers can become 20%ers.
They can.
And this way I'm not frustrated with them. The frustration for me, I can't speak for all other leaders, but the frustration for me was when I was putting all this time into those 80%ers and then they weren't performing.
Right.
Now they sensed my disappointment, and it wasn't good for them, it wasn't good for me. So I tried to identify who are the 20%ers. Let me invest more time with them and love and praise and appreciate everybody and build an environment where hey, a rising tide does lift all boats. But if the environment is positive and encouraging, then those 80%ers can become 20%ers.
That's great. Because that's a significant problem, though, in team building, because as the leader, you have to kind of match where the person is, at the same time, push them to do a little bit more if that's what their goals are, and when they don't do that, it's just a constant struggle, I think, for leaders.
I totally agree. You're right. You're so right.
Yeah, but it's good to know that there's a mechanism to kind of think about your team as a whole and how to partial out your own energy.
And there's a big difference between recruiting and building a team. Big difference, because there are people that can recruit and get people to say, I'm in, I'll give this a shot. And then there are other people that aren't so strong in the recruiting area. But if you're a good recruiter, that doesn't mean you necessarily build a big team either.
That's an interesting point.
And so when it comes to recruiting, that's a set of skills and a mindset, really more of a mindset than anything. But once you recruit people, and our business really is a numbers game. I mean, not that we treat people as numbers, but you have to recruit a certain number of people. I do believe you get the quality from the quantity.
Yes.
But building a team requires things like, these are the changes I need to make. I needed to learn how to apologize.
Okay.
You know, when I screwed up, or if I hurt somebody's feelings, or I said something stupid, or I was just insensitive. I mean, there were so many times I needed to apologize. You have to, as I think, if you're going to build a big team, you got to forgive people because, you know, people make mistakes and they'll wound you and they'll do stupid things, and you got to forgive them, because if you carry around a lot of unforgiveness in the people business, you just be hurt all the time. You know, you have to build a kind of esprit de corps, a team spirit. So one of the things that we did was build the team identity. We came up with a team name and team shirts and hats and, you know, just a team spirit, because people like to be part of something bigger than themselves. And so all those things go towards building a team, not just recruiting. Yes, you have to recruit.
Great distinction.
But I've seen people that can recruit, but they don't retain people. They don't build a team spirit. So I think they are two very different things.
Wow. Yeah, they are. And I guess I really never thought about it, but you're right. They very much are. And recruiting, you know, great people too, who are easier to coach, is kind of a nice thing to be able to do. But that's not always possible, of course. And but it is easier, I think, when you are more firm in who you are as a leader, and, you know, that just develops with time.
Great point. Now, when you say firm as who you are as a leader, that comes from the reprogramming, the self-improvement as you grow. You know, John Maxwell talks a lot about, okay, on a leadership scale where 10 is the superstar leader, they're the best, the greatest leader you ever saw, or 1 is the, you know, the guy sleeping under the bridge, whatever. On that scale, if you're a 5 on that scale, it's hard for you to attract 6 and 7s.
Yes.
Because a 6 and 7 wants to follow an 8 or a 9.
Right.
If you're a 3 on the scale, it's really hard to attract better quality. So what you do is, by working on self-improvement, by getting better at your craft, mastering the products, the scripts, you know, as you grow in your confidence, you'll also grow up that leadership scale. And if you can get yourself to a 7 or 8 or 9, now you can start attracting 5, 6, and 7s, and that's when it really multiplies.
Yeah. Is there anything about where you are now, or maybe even 10 years ago, let's say, when you were clearly, you know, really in your wheelhouse, that surprised you about that level? Like you were, you know, at a very high level. Was there anything when you imagined yourself being there that when you got there, better or worse, you know, anything that surprised you?
I think, yes. I don't know if anybody's ever asked me this, but I think what surprised me was when we reached a certain level of income and success and accumulated a certain amount of wealth, the amount of influence that I had surprised me. That people would listen, you know, differently.
Interesting.
And I think, gosh, I'm kind of saying the same things that I said 5 years ago, but people will listen differently now. Yeah, so that did surprise me. The message kind of stayed the same. But because we had achieved a certain level, we had more credibility or more influence or a larger platform. And that was both refreshing and humbling. Like, okay, now, all right, so if we have been given this responsibility of influence, we need to make sure that we're humble and we're using it in the right way to build people up and edify and encourage people. So I would say that did surprise me.
Wow, isn't that neat? And that probably just vaulted your leadership to a different level, because knowing that you have that influence to yield really can, you know, make or break people. You know, when you get to a certain point and you realize the power that you have, you know, that can go a lot of different ways. Wow, neat. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. Again, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I'm so appreciative of your gracious use of your time on your vacation, and hopefully the background noises weren't too distracting for everybody.
Well, it was a thrill for me. I was so honored when you asked.
Oh my
Thank
gosh,
you, Anita.
thank you for your kind words.
All right.
All right.